The sun had only just begun to stretch its light across the rooftops of Atlanta when Sergeant Monique Harris stirred awake. Her mornings followed a ritual that years in the Army had etched deep into her bones. The discipline never left, no matter how long she had been out of uniform. She rose from bed at 5:30 sharp, smoothing the sheets with precision, and then moved to the window to greet the day. It was a crisp morning. The September air carried just enough of a chill to remind her of autumn's approach. As she inhaled deeply, she felt that familiar weight of readiness, a sense of purpose that once carried her through missions in Iraq and Afghanistan. Even now, back in civilian life, Monique carried herself with the same posture of alertness, her shoulders squared, chin lifted, as though she were still commanding a platoon. Today, though, was not about missions or military briefings. Today was supposed to be simple. She had a routine appointment at the VA hospital 2 hours away, a drive she had made countless times. It was the kind of day when nothing extraordinary should happen. She had even promised herself she'd stop at her favorite roadside diner on the way home, treat herself to a slice of warm pecan pie, the way her mother used to make it. After showering, Monique dressed in civilian clothes, but couldn't resist slipping her army jacket over her t-shirt. The jacket was worn, its patches slightly faded, but it carried her story. Tours of duty, awards for valor, scars seen and unseen. She slid her medals carefully into a leather pouch and tucked them into her handbag. Some veterans kept their medals in boxes, hidden away. Not Monique. She carried them with her, especially on VA days, as if they were proof that everything she endured was real. Her sacrifices, her courage, her survival. She brewed a pot of coffee, humming softly to herself, the tune of an old gospel song her grandmother used to sing. The little apartment she rented was quiet, decorated modestly with mementos, framed photos of her unit, a folded American flag, and one picture of her younger self, beaming in her crisp dress uniform. She stared at that photograph now and smiled. That girl was fearless. That girl had believed that serving her country meant she'd be respected when she came home. Not as she sipped her coffee. Her phone buzzed. A message from her brother, Marcus. "Don't forget, call me after your appointment. I want to hear what the doc says. Love you." Monique typed back quickly. "Will do. Love you too." Her bond with Marcus was unbreakable. He was the one who checked in when nights grew long and memories heavy. He was the one who reminded her she wasn't alone, even on days when the world felt indifferent to her service. By 7, she was ready to go. She slipped on her boots, locked her door, and made her way to the parking lot. Her car, a silver Honda Accord, wasn't flashy, but it was reliable. She had bought it after returning stateside, her first big purchase as a civilian. Sliding into the driver's seat, she adjusted the mirrors and started the engine. A gospel radio station filled the car, the voices rising in harmony as she pulled out of the lot. The highway was quiet for the first leg of her journey. Rows of trees lined the road, their leaves just beginning to turn. She found herself lost in thought, remembering the dusty roads of Kabul, the constant tension of waiting for the unexpected. How strange, she mused, that a drive through rural Georgia could feel more dangerous than a convoy through Afghanistan. She shook the thought away. Today was supposed to be peaceful. An hour into her drive, Monique entered a smaller county road, a shortcut she often used. The 2-lane stretch cut through fields and tiny towns where time seemed to move slower. She had grown used to the stares in these areas, the way some locals looked at her as if she didn't belong. At first, she had brushed it off. But there were moments, subtle yet heavy, when those looks carried something more: suspicion, hostility, disdain. She turned up the volume on the radio, letting the choir voices drown out her unease. It was then she noticed the patrol car. At first, it was just a set of headlights in her mirror. She didn't think much of its speed limits here, or strictly enforced. But when the car stayed behind her for miles, her stomach tightened. She checked her speedometer, exactly the limit. She signaled every turn. She did nothing wrong. Yet the patrol car lingered. She reminded herself, stay calm. Don't give them a reason. But then came the second car. Another set of flashing lights merged behind the first, both following her now, their presence heavy and deliberate. Monique's heart began to pound. She kept her eyes on the road, her grip on the steering wheel firm but controlled. She thought of her father's advice from years ago, when she was just learning to drive. If they stop you, be respectful. Keep your hands where they can see them. Don't argue. The irony hit her like a blow. She had commanded soldiers, negotiated with Afghan elders, survived firefights, and yet here she was, bracing herself like a teenager, preparing for a lecture. Except she knew this could be far worse. The flashing lights came suddenly. Red and blue flooded her rearview mirror. The sound of the siren cut through the gospel choir's final verse. Monique pulled to the shoulder, her heartbeat loud in her ears. She rolled down the window, placed both hands visibly on the wheel, and inhaled deeply. This was supposed to be a simple day. A doctor's appointment. A slice of pie. But as the officers approached, their hands already resting on their belts, Monique felt an old familiar instinct kick in, one she hadn't needed since leaving the battlefield. Something told her she was about to enter another kind of war. The patrol car door slammed shut with a metallic thud that echoed louder than it should have. Monique watched in her side mirror as the first officer approached, his hand brushing the holster at his hip, as if instinctively reminding her of its presence. His partner circled the back of her Honda, peering inside as though expecting contraband to leap out of the back seat. Monique kept her hands firmly on the wheel, knuckles pale, her breathing measured. She remembered every briefing she'd ever given her soldiers. Stay calm. Control your fear. Read the situation. Only now, the battlefield was a quiet Georgia roadside. License and registration, the officer barked, his voice sharp and unwelcoming. He was tall, middle-aged, with a mustache that twitched as he spoke. His eyes carried no hint of courtesy, only suspicion. Yes, officer, Monique said evenly. Her voice, trained through years of command, carried a respectful steadiness. Slowly, deliberately, she reached into her handbag, retrieving her license and vehicle registration. She made sure her movements were deliberate, slow enough that he couldn't accuse her of reaching. She passed the documents out the window. He snatched them from her hand, his eyes flicking from the license to her face. His lips curled. Sergeant Monique Harris, huh? Army vet? Yes, sir, she said. The second officer, younger, but with the same hardened expression, leaned closer to the window, squinting at her jacket. His gaze fell on the faded patch on her shoulder. What's this? You think this means something around here? He chuckled bitterly. Whole lot of people buy these online. Monique swallowed hard. Her medals were still in her bag, silent proof of her service, but she didn't want to flash them like weapons. These aren't bought, officer, she replied. I served overseas. 2 tours. The first officer smirked. That so? Funny. You don't look like a soldier. You look like someone driving a car that doesn't belong to her. He tapped the hood of the Honda with the butt of his flashlight. This is my vehicle, Monique said, her voice still even. I have the title in my glove compartment if you'd like to see it. Step out of the car, he ordered abruptly. Her heart sank. She had done nothing wrong, not even a cracked taillight, but the tone in his voice carried a decision already made. She glanced at the rear-view mirror. The younger officer's hand rested casually near his holster. Monique's training screamed at her, stay alive first. Fight later. She unbuckled her seatbelt slowly and stepped out. The early morning air hit her face, cool but sharp. She stood tall, instinctively straightening her posture, her chin lifted. Even in this humiliating moment, she would not slouch. The older officer walked around her car, muttering under his breath. Out-of-towners always think they can just roll through here. Not on my watch. He glanced back at her license, then said, "You're under suspicion of driving a stolen vehicle." Monique's eyes widened. "Suspicion? That's my name on the registration you're holding. This is my car. Don't argue," he snapped. "Hands behind your back." She froze. 1,000 thoughts rushed through her mind. Her appointment, Marcus waiting for her call, the medals in her bag, the lecture she'd given young soldiers about standing up to tyranny. But here she was, back in the country she had fought to defend, being treated as less than human. "Officer," she said firmly but respectfully, "I am a United States Army veteran. This is a mistake. Please check your records before." Her words cut off as cold steel cuffs snapped around her wrists. The metal bit into her skin, tighter than necessary. The younger officer chuckled, shaking his head. "You people always think you can talk your way out of things," he muttered. Monique gritted her teeth, forcing herself to breathe steadily. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing fear. Instead, she focused on her father's voice in her memory. "They can strip your freedom, but don't let them strip your dignity." The older officer pushed her toward the patrol car. "You're under arrest for suspicion of theft and resisting a lawful stop." "Resisting?" She echoed in disbelief. "I complied with every instruction." He smirked. "That's not what my report will say." The younger officer opened the back door of the patrol car, and Monique was shoved inside. The door slammed, trapping her in a cage of steel and plexiglass. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her face remained composed. She had survived roadside bombs and sniper fire. She could endure this. Still, the humiliation burned deep. From the back seat, she caught a glimpse of her car in the rearview mirror, her bag still inside, her medals lying unprotected. Those medals represented blood, sweat, and years of sacrifice. Now they sat in the custody of men who mocked their meaning. As the patrol car pulled away, Monique looked out at the empty road. Her mind flashed to Marcus. She wished she could call him, hear his steady voice, but they had taken her phone. She closed her eyes briefly, whispering a silent prayer. "Lord, watch over me. Give me strength." The ride to the station was silent, the air thick with hostility. The officers didn't bother to read her rights. They didn't ask further questions. It was as if the decision had been made the moment they saw her at a stoplight. The younger officer finally broke the silence. "You know, it's funny. All this talk about equality and service. Yet here you are, in the back seat where you belong." The word stabbed, but Monique remained quiet. She had learned long ago that silence could be more powerful than protest. She sat tall, her gaze fixed forward, refusing to let them see defeat in her eyes. As the station came into view, its small brick building looming against the morning sky, Monique exhaled slowly. This was no longer just a traffic stop. This was the beginning of something far more dangerous. And somewhere deep in her chest, a new awareness began to stir. She didn't know it yet, but this injustice would not go unanswered. Forces larger than this county, larger than these men, were already moving into place. The patrol car jolted to a stop outside the small brick police station, its windows smudged with years of grime. The morning sun, which only hours ago had promised Monique a day of peace, now seemed harsh, glaring down like an indifferent witness. The older officer yanked open the back door, his grip firm as he pulled her out. The cuffs bit into her wrists, already tender from the drive. "Move," he ordered, pushing her forward. Monique's boots scuffed against the cracked pavement as she walked, shoulders square, head held high. Years of military bearing wouldn't allow her to slouch, even in chains. She reminded herself silently, dignity cannot be cuffed. They can bruise your wrists, but they cannot bruise your spirit. The younger officer trailed behind, his footsteps slower, hesitant. He avoided her eyes. For a flicker of a second, Monique caught a glimpse of something shame, doubt, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. Inside, the station smelled of stale coffee and sweat. A television in the corner murmured faintly with the morning news, but no one paid attention. The few officers scattered about glanced up as she entered, some smirking, others indifferent, as though another black body in chains was nothing worth remarking on. "Got ourselves a stolen car suspect," the older officer announced proudly, tossing her paperwork onto the desk. The desk sergeant, a heavy-set man with a buzz cut, didn't even look at the documents. Instead, his gaze went straight to Monique. "She give you trouble?" "Resisted," the older officer lied smoothly. "Mouthy too." Monique clenched her jaw, but said nothing. Speaking now would only feed their narrative. The sergeant nodded toward a bench. "Sit her down. We'll book her after I finish this report." The officers guided her to the bench, forcing her to sit. Her bag was dropped on the desk with a careless thud. One of them unzipped it, rummaging through. A gleam of metal caught the light. Well, look at this," the younger one said, pulling out the leather pouch. He opened it, spilling her medals onto the table. Bronze, silver, and ribbons clattered across the desk. The older officer whistled mockingly. "Oh, look at that. We've got a hero in our midst." He picked up a medal between two fingers, holding it like it was contaminated. "What did you do, sweetheart? Buy this off eBay?" De Roon chuckled. Monique's stomach twisted. She had earned those medals in sweat, blood, and tears. She had carried soldiers off the battlefield, bandaged wounds under fire, and stood in dust storms so thick you couldn't see your own hand. Each medal told a story, a sacrifice. Now they lay like trinkets beneath the smirks of men who couldn't imagine what they meant. "They're real," she said quietly, her voice steady. The older officer leaned closer, his breath hot with coffee and disdain. "Sure they are. And I'm the President of the United States." He dropped the medal back onto the desk with a loud clink. The younger officer shifted uneasily, his eyes flicking to her face. Something about her composure unsettled him. Most people shouted, begged, or cried when mocked. This woman, however, sat tall, her eyes unflinching, her silence louder than protest. The sergeant scribbled on a clipboard. "Charges? Resisting arrest, assault, disorderly conduct," the older officer recited, each word dripping with casual malice. Monique's head snapped up. "That's a lie." "Quiet," the sergeant snapped. "You'll get your say in court." Court. She knew the truth. For countless black men and women, court was just another arena where lies triumphed over dignity. Still, she bit her tongue, saving her words. "Not here. Not now." They led her into a holding cell, the door clanging shut with a hollow finality. The cell was small, its concrete walls stained with age, its metal bench cold and unforgiving. She sat down, the cuffs finally removed, her wrists raw and red. The door's bars loomed before her like prison gates, though she had committed no crime. Alone now, she allowed herself a long exhale. The silence was heavy, broken only by muffled voices from the other room. She pressed her palms together, resting her forehead on her hands. Memories came unbidden of nights in desert tents, when explosions shook the ground, and soldiers clung to faith just to see the dawn. She remembered the faces of comrades who hadn't made it home, their bravery unrecognized except by those who loved them. She whispered softly, "I didn't endure that, just to be broken here." Her father's voice echoed in her memory again. Don't let them take what makes you whole. Monique straightened her back. She wouldn't crumble. She wouldn't let these men rewrite her story. Time crawled. Minutes felt like hours. Occasionally, she heard bursts of laughter outside, the officers' voices carrying into the cell. Once, she caught fragments of their words. Think anyone's gonna believe her? No chance. 2 cops against 1 vet? Please. Judge'll throw the book at her. She'd be lucky if she sees daylight before trial. Their confidence was sickening. Monique closed her eyes, forcing her mind elsewhere. She thought of Marcus. If only she could reach him. She pictured his determined face, his quick mind. He was her anchor, her fighter in the world of laws and courts where she often felt powerless. She hoped he'd realize something was wrong when she didn't call. She hoped, no, she believed that somehow he'd find her. The clank of boots startled her. The younger officer appeared at her cell, his face half hidden in shadow. He didn't speak at first, just stared. Finally, he said softly, "You really served?" Monique met his eyes. Yes, 2 tours. Iraq and Afghanistan. He looked down, shifting his weight. My brother. He's deployed now. Afghanistan. For the first time, his voice carried something human. Monique's heart softened, just a fraction. Then you know. He deserves respect. So do I. The officer's jaw tightened. He didn't reply. Instead, he turned quickly and walked away, as though ashamed of being caught with compassion. Monique leaned back against the wall, her pulse steadying. That small crack in his armor gave her hope. Not everyone here was lost. Still, the nightmarish reality pressed down. She was behind bars, her honor mocked, her freedom stolen. And unless something changed, the lies being written outside would become her truth on paper. But Monique Harris was no stranger to battles. She had fought for her life in the deserts of war, and she would fight for her name here. What she didn't know, what she couldn't yet see, was that a lifeline had already been cast. Marcus had not ignored her silence. A single desperate message, sent before her phone was seized, had set into motion forces that would soon collide with this corrupt station. For now, though, she sat in the cold, damp cell, holding fast to one truth. They could chain her wrists, but they could not chain her spirit. And outside, the clock ticked relentlessly toward the moment when the world would come crashing into this little precinct. The fluorescent light inside the holding cell buzzed faintly, a dull sound that made the silence heavier. Monique Harris sat on the cold bench, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Every breath she drew was steady, but beneath that surface calm, her chest carried a weight heavier than any rucksack she had ever shouldered during her years in the army. Combat zones had tested her spirit, but what she faced now, humiliation at the hands of men sworn to protect their community, cut deeper. She thought of her service in Afghanistan, the long nights on patrol, the trust she placed in fellow soldiers, regardless of their background. They had depended on each other for survival. Yet here she was, a decorated veteran back home, treated like a criminal because of the color of her skin. Her mind replayed the moment in the squad car when her phone buzzed in her pocket as the officers cuffed her. They hadn't noticed when she slid her thumb across the screen to send a single message. Just 3 words. Need help now. Sent to her brother Marcus. Monique closed her eyes. That text was her only lifeline. She didn't know whether it had gone through before the officers seized the phone, but she trusted Marcus. He had always been the dependable one, the brother who had cheered at her boot camp graduation, the one who stayed awake until dawn to welcome her home from deployments, the one who became her anchor when nightmares of war followed her into civilian life. Marcus gets the text at that exact moment, in a modest apartment in Washington, D.C. Marcus Harris sat at his cluttered desk, buried in paperwork for a civil rights case He was helping a senior attorney prepare. His phone buzzed, and he almost ignored it. But when he saw his sister's name flash across the screen, his heart lurched. He opened the message. "Need help now." Marcus stood so quickly his chair toppled. He called Monique immediately, but the line went straight to voicemail. Panic set in. His sister wasn't one to exaggerate or cry wolf. If she said she needed help, she truly did. Within seconds, Marcus's legal instincts kicked in. He grabbed his keys and his laptop bag, bolted down the stairs, and called a number he rarely used, the direct line to a contact in the FBI Civil Rights Division. He had met Special Agent Ramirez during a past case involving police misconduct, and though Marcus was just a paralegal, Ramirez had respected his diligence. When the agent answered, Marcus didn't waste time. "It's my sister, Monique Harris. She's a veteran Army sergeant, decorated. She just texted me for help. I think she's been detained unlawfully. This is in Greene County, Alabama. You know the history there." There was a pause, then Ramirez's voice hardened. "Stay on the line. Tell me everything you know." Greene County's reputation. Greene County wasn't unfamiliar to the FBI. It had a troubling record: discrimination complaints, civil rights lawsuits, and whispers of corruption. It wasn't every day the Bureau could intervene, but when a U.S. military veteran texted for help from inside a hostile police station, it sent alarms up the chain of command. Ramirez quickly dispatched a rapid response team already stationed within an hour's drive. Marcus, his voice breaking with urgency, provided every detail he knew about Monique. Her car, her route to the VA, her medals, her spotless record. Ramirez assured him, "We'll take this seriously. Don't go down there yourself. It could escalate. Trust me." Marcus hung up and collapsed into his chair, trembling. He whispered to himself, "Hold on, sis. Just hold on." Back in the holding cell, meanwhile, Monique could hear the muffled laughter of officers down the hall. She knew they were cooking up a story. False charges. Lies they'd put into a report that could destroy her reputation. She clenched her jaw, refusing to let fear show. Through the bars, she caught the eye of a young officer standing near the booking desk. He couldn't have been more than 24, with a nervous stance and a face that hadn't yet learned how to hide doubt. Their eyes met briefly before he looked away. Something about his unease struck Monique. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't like the others. Still, time dragged like chains. She thought about what 30 minutes in a cell meant when lies were being built against her. A lifetime of honor could vanish in a report signed by men who saw her not as a soldier, not as a citizen, but as a threat. Marcus's desperation. Marcus couldn't sit still. He called their mother in Atlanta, his voice shaking as he explained. Their mother wept softly on the other end, but Marcus tried to stay strong. "We have to trust the Bureau," he said, though his own faith wavered. He opened his laptop, pulling up articles and legal documents on Greene County's police misconduct history. He began compiling everything: court rulings, affidavits, even news clippings, determined to create a record in case things went wrong. It was his way of fighting back, even from a distance. Every tick of the clock made him picture Monique sitting in a dark cell, alone. He remembered the stories she told of Afghanistan, the fear of ambush, the loss of friends, the smell of dust and smoke. She had survived that. But would she survive this kind of war, the one waged not with bullets, but with prejudice and power? The FBI mobilizes on a highway outside Greene County. 3 black SUVs sped toward the sheriff's station. Inside sat Special Agent Ramirez and a team of FBI agents specializing in civil rights investigations. They were equipped not just with badges and firearms, but with knowledge body cam policies, federal statutes, and the authority to demand immediate compliance. Ramirez reviewed the briefing. Decorated veteran. No criminal record. Pulled over on suspicionless grounds. This could blow up fast. If they've already started fabricating charges, we need evidence, body cams, security footage, witness accounts. And we get her out safe. The team nodded. This wasn't just another case file. This was a woman who had risked her life for her country, now betrayed by those sworn to uphold its laws. Back at the station, the fabrication grows inside. The officers chuckled as they typed on a computer. Resisting arrest. Disorderly conduct. Throw in attempted assault. That'll stick, one said, tapping the keys. Monique heard every word. Her stomach nodded, but she kept her eyes forward. Silence was her weapon now. She would not give them the satisfaction of breaking her. The rookie officer shifted uncomfortably, glancing at her, then at his colleagues. Sweat dotted his forehead. Finally, he muttered, "Are you sure about this?" She didn't. She didn't really do anything. The room fell silent. The senior officer shot him a glare sharp enough to cut glass. "You're new here, kid. You'll learn how things work." The rookie swallowed hard, nodding, but the doubt in his eyes lingered. Marcus's silent prayer in Washington. Marcus pressed his palms together, whispering, "Please, God, protect her. Don't let this be the end of her story." He didn't know the SUVs were already minutes away. He didn't know that Special Agent Ramirez's team was preparing to storm the station with federal warrants in hand. But in that fragile moment of hope, he clung to one thought. His sister had faced fire overseas, and she had never surrendered. She wouldn't surrender now. The stage is set back in Greene County. Monique sat tall on the bench, her military posture unbroken. She remembered her drill sergeant's words. In the worst moments, stand taller. That's when you show who you are. Her heart thudded with steady courage. She didn't know that help was already racing toward her. She didn't know that in less than 30 minutes, the doors of the station would be torn open by federal agents. But she sensed something in the air, the rookie's unease, the faint tension that even the fluorescent buzz couldn't hide. For the first time since being dragged into custody, Monique allowed herself to believe, this is not where my story ends. The hours Monique spent in combat zones had trained her to read atmospheres. In Kandahar, she could sense danger before a shot was fired, just from the uneasy silence that crept over the desert air. Now, sitting on a hard bench in Greene County Sheriff's Station, she felt that same unease pressing in. The officers were too loud, too careless in their laughter, too quick in their movements, as they typed falsehoods into a report that could ruin her life. Her wrists ached from the cuffs they had not yet removed. The humiliation stung worse than the metal. She was a veteran, a sergeant who had worn the flag on her uniform overseas. And yet, here back home, the very people sworn to defend her rights treated her as if she were less than human. The officer's game at the desk. Two senior deputies leaned over the computer screen. One read aloud as he typed. Suspect became hostile. Resisted lawful arrest. Attempted to strike an officer during restraint. The other snorted. Make sure you put down erratic behavior. That always sticks. They chuckled as if they were writing a script for a play instead of fabricating charges against a real person. Monique kept her eyes forward. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her anger, though inside it boiled like a storm. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. She had learned in the army that sometimes the strongest move was to wait until the moment came to strike back. The rookie's unease, the rookie officer from earlier, shifted near the doorway. He had been quiet, watching, but the furrow in his brow betrayed his discomfort. His hands fidgeted against his belt, his jaw tightening each time another lie was added to the report. Finally, he stepped forward. Sir, with respect, none of this happened. She didn't resist. She didn't even raise her voice. Are we sure we should? His senior deputy cut him off with a glare sharp enough to slice steel. "Kid, you want to make it in this department? You keep your mouth shut and follow orders. This is how it works around here. Don't go soft on me." The rookie swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing. He nodded, but didn't look convinced. His eyes darted back to Monique, who met his gaze briefly. For a second, their eyes locked, and she saw the flicker of conflict in his. Perhaps, she thought, he could still make a choice that mattered. Monique's inner battle, alone on the bench. Monique's mind flickered back to Afghanistan. She remembered leading her squad through a marketplace after an IED had detonated. Chaos, smoke, screaming civilians. She remembered the weight of command, the responsibility to protect lives, even when danger loomed unseen. That responsibility hadn't left her. She felt it even now, in this cell, not just for herself, but for the truth. If she broke down, if she begged or lost control, the officers would twist it into fuel for their lies. She had to stay composed for her brother Marcus, for her mother, for every soldier who had fought beside her. Stand taller in the worst moments. The words echoed in her mind like a drumbeat. Marcus waits, meanwhile. In Washington, Marcus paced his living room like a caged animal. Every few minutes, he checked his phone, praying for an update from the FBI. His hands trembled as he sipped cold coffee he hadn't realized had gone untouched. He had spent the last hour compiling Greene County's history. Reports of excessive force, discrimination complaints, lawsuits swept under the rug. He had sent it all to Agent Ramirez, hoping it would strengthen the urgency. But what gnawed at him most was the silence. His sister's last words, "need help now," echoed endlessly in his mind. He prayed she was holding strong, prayed that the Bureau would arrive before those lies became official records. The report grows at the desk. The deputies laughed again. "Throw in possession of a suspicious substance. That'll keep her tied up longer." The rookie looked horrified. She didn't have anything on her. "I searched her bag myself. Just documents and medals." "Then you saw wrong," the older deputy sneered. "You'll learn soon enough. We write what we need to write." The rookie stepped back, conflicted. He wasn't ready to be a whistleblower, but his conscience screamed louder with every keystroke. The waiting game Monique shifted on the bench, the cuffs biting into her wrists. Her stomach clenched, not from fear, but from frustration. She thought of Marcus again, wondering if her message had reached him. She didn't know that as she sat in silence, 3 black SUVs were already speeding down the highway toward Greene County. She didn't know that Special Agent Ramirez had assembled a rapid response team with warrants in hand, determined to walk through those station doors before the night was over. All she knew was that time was slipping away, and with each passing second, the walls of lies being built against her grew higher. The rookie's choice minutes dragged. The rookie officer's unease deepened until he finally slipped out of the room. His heart pounded as he ducked into a side hallway, pulling out his phone. He hesitated, thumb hovering over the camera app, then switched to the files menu. His body cam footage. He had been wearing it during the arrest, though the senior deputies had ordered him to delete anything useless. His thumb shook as he hovered over the file. He knew this footage was proof Monique had been calm, compliant, respectful. Proof the charges were lies. He whispered to himself, "Do the right thing, man. Do the right thing?" The storm approaches back on the highway. Ramirez checked his watch. ETA, 12 minutes. His jaw was tight, his eyes focused. He knew every second mattered. Corrupt officers could lock away an innocent person with the stroke of a pen. He wasn't about to let that happen on his watch. The SUVs roared down the dark road, sirens off, their presence a silent thunderstorm moving closer to Greene County. Monique's steadfastness inside the cell. Monique straightened her back once more. She inhaled deeply, letting her training center her. She would not fold. She would not let them see her fear. The officers thought they had control, thought they could bury her in lies. But Monique had faced worse odds before. In Afghanistan, she had stood her ground while mortar fell. She would stand her ground now. And though she didn't know it yet, justice was already racing toward her. The station was alive with the hum of fluorescent lights and the low cackle of deputies spinning lies into official records. The senior officers, comfortable in their control, believed they had all the time in the world to bury Sergeant Monique Harris beneath fabricated charges. But time was no longer theirs. A silent arrival outside. 3 black SUVs rolled to a halt in the gravel lot. Their engines idled low, lights off. Special Agent Ramirez stepped out first, his coat flaring slightly in the cool night breeze. He surveyed the building, an old brick structure with weathered paint and a flag that hung limp in the still air. Behind him, his team fanned out with quiet precision. These weren't ordinary field agents. They were part of the Bureau's Civil Rights Task Force, trained to deal with hostile law enforcement environments. Each agent wore body armor beneath their suits, radios clipped to their belts, and carried the authority of federal law. "Check comes," Ramirez ordered softly. 2 at the back, 2 on the side. "We go in front." A chorus of affirmatives crackled back. The agents moved quickly, boots crunching softly against gravel, their steps purposeful but controlled. Inside, the deputies were oblivious. The laughter carried on. Monique's stillness in the holding cell, Monique sat like a statue. Hours of military drills had taught her the value of stillness, not just for survival, but for power. She felt the weight of eyes on her, the rookies especially. He lingered near the hall again, clearly torn between loyalty to his corrupt superiors and the truth his conscience screamed at him. She caught his gaze once more. It was fleeting, but this time she saw something more than doubt resolve was building behind his uncertainty. Then came a sound that shifted the atmosphere. The heavy thud of doors swinging open, louder than any deputy expected. The invasion, Federal Bureau of Investigation. The voice boomed through the station like a thunderclap. Deputies froze mid-laugh, their heads snapping toward the lobby. Ramirez and 4 agents swept in, badges raised, their presence commanding immediate attention. The senior deputy at the computer shot to his feet. "What the hell is this?" "Step away from the desk," Ramirez barked. "Hands where I can see them. Now." Shock rippled through the room. The younger deputies complied instantly, but the older ones bristled with defiance. One sneered, "This is Greene County jurisdiction. You got no authority here." Ramirez's eyes narrowed. His badge gleamed under the harsh fluorescent light as he took a step closer. "I've got every authority under federal law when civil rights are being violated. And right now, I have probable cause to believe that's exactly what's happening here." The room went silent. Tension coiled like a spring. The rookie steps forward. The rookie officer suddenly cleared his throat. His voice trembled but carried weight. "Agents, I've got body cam footage. Everything." She was compliant. "They're lying in the report." Every head turned. The senior deputies glared at him, fury flashing in their eyes. But the rookie didn't falter this time. His hand shook as he unclipped the body cam and handed it to an agent. Monique felt her chest tighten not from fear, but from hope. For the first time since her arrest, she saw light piercing through the darkness. The lies collapse. Ramirez nodded to his tech agent, who plugged the body cam into a laptop he carried. Within seconds, footage played on screen. Monique's calm responses during the traffic stop, her steady compliance, the deputy's hostile tone, and the moment they yanked her from the car without provocation. The truth spilled out in real time, undeniable. Ramirez's jaw set. He turned to the senior deputy. "You've falsified charges against a U.S. Army veteran." That's obstruction, false imprisonment, and civil rights violations. And it ends tonight. The deputy's bravado faltered, his face paling. This is a mistake. We were just, save it for the judge, Ramirez snapped. Monique's released 2 agents moved swiftly to the holding cell. The keys jingled, the lock clicked, and the heavy iron door swung open. Sergeant Harris? One agent said respectfully, his tone a stark contrast to the deputy's. You're free to go. On behalf of the United States government, I want to apologize for what you've endured tonight. Monique stood slowly, her posture unbroken, her eyes fierce despite exhaustion. The cuffs came off, the sting fading from her wrists, though the memory would never leave. She stepped out of the cell with dignity, head high, her silence speaking louder than any words could. The deputies who had mocked her earlier now avoided her gaze. Their smirks had vanished, replaced with tight jaws and twitching hands. The arrests begin. Deputy Carter, Deputy Mills, Ramirez barked, pointing at the senior officers. You are under arrest for deprivation of rights under color of law, falsifying federal records, and conspiracy. Place your hands behind your backs. The room erupted in chaos. Carter sputtered. You can't do this. We run this county. Not anymore, Ramirez said coldly. Agents moved in, cuffing the deputies with the same steel they had once used to shackle Monique. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The rookie officer stepped aside, his face pale but relieved. His choice had tipped the scales. Monique's moment as agents escorted her toward the door. Monique paused. She turned, her eyes locking on the deputies now restrained. She didn't speak, she didn't need to. Her silence, her strength, her very presence was condemnation enough. Then she turned back and walked toward freedom. Outside, the night air hit her like a wave. Cool, crisp, cleansing. For the first time that night, she allowed herself a deep breath. She was free but changed. The scars of what had happened wouldn't fade quickly. Marcus gets the call back in Washington. Marcus's phone rang. He fumbled to answer, his heart hammering. Marcus Harris? Ramirez's voice came through. Your sister is safe. We have her. The deputies responsible are in custody. She'll be coming home. Marcus's knees buckled as relief flooded through him. He sank into his chair, tears blurring his vision. Thank you. Thank you for saving her. No, Ramirez replied firmly. Thank her for her strength. And thank the truth. That's what won tonight. The weight of justice as the SUVs prepared to leave. Monique sat in the back seat of one, flanked by agents. She stared out the window at the fading lights of Greene County's sheriff's office. A building that had once seemed like a fortress of power now looked small, brittle, and corrupt. The road stretched ahead, uncertain but open. She had faced humiliation, lies, and injustice, but she had not been broken. And now, with federal eyes on her case, she knew this story wasn't just her own. It was bigger. The fight for justice was only beginning. The Greene County Sheriff's Station had always felt untouchable, a fortress of local power where rules bent to the whims of those who wore the badge. But tonight, the balance of power shifted. For the first time in years, the deputies were not in control. Shackles reversed deputies Carter and Mills, the ones who had laughed the loudest, who had typed lies into the computer with smug certainty, were now the ones being cuffed. Their faces burned with fury as federal agents secured their wrists behind their backs. The same steel they had slapped on Monique hours earlier now clicked shut around them. This is a damn outrage. Carter shouted, spittle flying. You don't come into our house telling us how to do our jobs. Ramirez's voice cut through the noise like a blade. This isn't your house. This is the people's house. And tonight, you disgraced it. The younger deputies, who had stood silent during Monique's humiliation, now shrank against the walls. None dared to intervene. Monique watches. From where she stood near the lobby, Monique watched quietly. Her wrists were free, her dignity intact, but she carried no triumph in her eyes, only steadiness. She had been trained to hold her emotions in the heat of battle. This was no different. Still, when she saw the deputies forced to bow their heads as agents led them toward waiting SUVs, she felt something stir inside. Not satisfaction, not revenge, but a fragile, hard-won sense of justice. She thought of Marcus and their mother, waiting in worry hundreds of miles away. This was for them too. The rookie's confession. The rookie officer, pale and sweating, stepped forward as the chaos simmered. His voice cracked, but carried determination. Agents, there's more. They've been doing this for years. False arrests, bogus charges, targeting people who can't fight back. I've got files. I've seen it. I kept copies, just in case. Every agent in the room froze. Ramirez's eyes locked on the young man. You're ready to hand them over? The rookie nodded, his jaw tight. Yes, sir. I joined to protect people, not to destroy them. For a moment, silence hung heavy. Then Ramirez extended his hand. You did the right thing tonight, officer. Don't forget that. The rookie shook his hand firmly, as though sealing a vow. The community gathers outside. Word had already begun to spread. Greene County was small. News traveled faster than sirens. By the time the FBI loaded the arrested deputies into their SUVs, a crowd had gathered near the station. Neighbors, shopkeepers, church members, all whispering, all craning their necks to see. When Monique stepped into the night air, heads turned. Whispers swelled into gasps. A veteran, shackled only an hour ago, now walked free while officers shuffled away in chains. Someone in the crowd whispered, That's Sergeant Harris. She fought overseas. Another voice answered, louder this time, and they arrested her? For what? The murmurs grew into a wave of outrage. For years, the community had suspected corruption, but seeing it exposed so plainly lit a fire they had long suppressed. Monique's poise amid the commotion. Monique remained composed. She didn't wave, didn't shout, didn't collapse into relief. Instead, she stood with the posture of a soldier, shoulders square, chin high, eyes unflinching. That silent strength spoke louder than anything she could have said. The people saw it, and the agents saw it too. She wasn't just a victim of corruption. She was a symbol of resilience. Marcus's reunion hours later, at a safe federal office, Marcus arrived to see his sister. He rushed into the room, nearly knocking over a chair in his urgency. Monique! He cried, tears already spilling. She turned, and for the first time that night, her stoic mask broke. They embraced tightly, the kind of hug that collapsed the distance between war zones, prison cells, and family bonds. I thought I lost you, Marcus whispered into her hair. You never will, she replied firmly. You saved me. No, he said, pulling back to meet her eyes. You saved yourself. You never gave them what they wanted. The debrief Special Agent Ramirez entered, carrying a file. Sergeant Harris, Marcus, I wanted to update you. Carter and Mills are being processed for federal charges. We'll also be reviewing every arrest and report filed under their watch. If the rookie's evidence checks out, this entire department could face a reckoning. Marcus clenched his fists. Good. It's about time. Monique nodded, her voice steady. Justice isn't revenge. It's truth. That's all I want. Truth. Ramirez regarded her with respect. Then you'll have it. And you have my word you won't face this alone. National attention by morning, the story hit national headlines. News outlets broadcast images of Monique leaving the station, her posture commanding, while deputies were led away in disgrace. Racist deputies arrested for false imprisonment of Black Army veteran. One headline read, Hero veteran freed after FBI storms Greene County Station, declared another. The public's outrage surged. Commentators debated systemic corruption in rural departments. Veterans groups rallied behind Monique, demanding accountability for what she had endured. Greene County shaken. Within Greene County, the ground shifted. The community that had once feared speaking out now found its voice. Town meetings erupted with demands for reform. Citizens filed complaints they had long buried. For the first time in years, the badge no longer shielded corruption, it exposed it. The sheriff, who had been conveniently absent the night of Monique's arrest, now found himself under federal scrutiny. His silence, once a shield, became a weapon turned against him. Monique's reflection late one evening. Monique sat alone in a quiet room. The adrenaline had faded, leaving only the weight of memory. She traced the faint marks left by the cuffs on her wrists, her mind replaying every insult, every sneer, every fabricated word typed into that report. And yet, she also remembered the rookie's trembling hand offering the bodycam footage, the agents unlocking her cell, the sight of Carter and Mills being led away. She whispered softly, almost as if speaking to the ghosts of her fallen comrades. I didn't break. I stood tall. The bigger picture, the fight wasn't over. Trials lay ahead. Testimony, cross-examinations, endless paperwork. But Monique knew the truth was now undeniable. She wasn't just defending herself. She was defending every person who had been silenced by power and prejudice. And the tables had turned. For once, those who had abused their authority would face the weight of justice. And she, Sergeant Monique Harris, would not be silenced. The morning sun over Washington, D.C. was soft and pale, casting golden streaks across the marble steps of the courthouse. Reporters clustered like hawks, microphones raised, cameras flashing, waiting for the story they knew would shape the national conversation. At the center of it all was Monique Harris, dressed not in uniform this time, but in a simple blazer and slacks. No medals, no ribbons, just her presence, calm and resolute. She didn't need adornments. Her story carried its own weight. The courtroom inside, the atmosphere was electric. Federal prosecutors prepared their case with thick binders of evidence. Bodycam footage, falsified reports, testimonies from victims who had once been too afraid to speak. Deputies Carter and Mills sat at the defense table, their arrogance stripped away. They no longer looked like enforcers of the law, but men exposed, fragile without their badges. The sheriff himself had been indicted, his political allies fleeing as the tide of truth crashed over them. When Monique took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. Her voice was steady, each word deliberate, as she described the night she had been pulled over, the slurs, the cuffs, the fabricated charges. I fought for this country overseas, she said, eyes locked on the jury. But I should not have had to fight for my dignity here, in my own country, at the hands of those sworn to protect it. Her testimony rippled through the room like a shockwave. Jurors shifted uncomfortably. Even the judge leaned forward slightly, listening with sharpened focus. Marcus's pride from the gallery. Marcus watched his sister with tears pooling in his eyes. He thought back to the phone call that had started it all, the desperate hours he spent scrambling for help, the fear that he might lose her forever. Now she stood unshaken before the nation. When their eyes met briefly across the courtroom, Monique gave him the smallest nod, a soldier's signal. I'm still here. We're still fighting. The rookie's redemption. The rookie officer, now a key witness, sat stiffly at the stand, recounting how he had smuggled out bodycam footage and kept copies of falsified reports. His voice trembled at first, but as he spoke, his courage grew. They told me to delete footage, to ignore what I saw, he confessed. But I couldn't. I joined the force to protect people, not to destroy them. And I won't carry their lies anymore." The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. His bravery cracked open the silence of countless others, encouraging more officers and citizens to step forward with their own stories. The verdict, weeks of testimony and evidence, built to a dramatic close. When the jury filed back into the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. On the charges of false imprisonment, deprivation of civil rights, and conspiracy, the foreperson read, "We find the defendants guilty." Gasps and whispers filled the chamber. Carter's face drained of color. Mills slumped forward, defeated. A sheriff clenched his jaw, his empire collapsing around him. For Monique, there was no outburst, no triumphant cry. Just a slow, steady exhale, the release of a weight she had carried for too long. Justice had spoken. The nation responds. The trial became a lightning rod for national debate. News networks dissected every detail. Commentators argued about systemic racism, accountability, and the courage it took for Monique and the rookie to stand against the tide. Veterans groups rallied behind her, holding vigils and marches. Civil rights organizations praised her bravery, calling her testimony a turning point. Even members of Congress cited her case during debates on police reform. In towns far from Greene County, people whispered her name with respect. Sergeant Monique Harris, the veteran who stood tall when everything tried to break her. Monique's reflection. One evening, after weeks of media frenzy, Monique returned to her modest apartment. She placed her old army jacket over the back of a chair and sat quietly by the window. The city buzzed outside, but inside there was peace. She traced the scar on her arm from her deployment, then looked at the faint marks that cuffs had left on her wrists. Both told stories of battles fought, one abroad, one at home. In her journal, she wrote, "Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about truth rising where lies once ruled. Tonight, truth stands taller than ever." Marcus's words. Marcus visited that night, carrying takeout bags of fried chicken and sweet tea. They ate together, laughing for the first time in what felt like years. "You know, sis," Marcus said, his mouth full, "you're a national hero now. People are calling you the Rosa Parks of veterans." Monique rolled her eyes but smiled. "I don't want to be a symbol, Marcus. I just want people to be safe, to not fear the ones sworn to protect them." "You didn't choose to be a symbol," Marcus replied, his tone softening. "But sometimes history chooses us." The rookie's new path. Weeks later, Monique learned that the rookie officer had resigned from the Greene County Sheriff's Office. But instead of vanishing, he applied to join a federal agency committed to oversight and accountability. When he sent Monique a short letter thanking her for her courage, she replied simply, "It takes more courage to stand against your own than to fight strangers. You did the right thing. Never forget that." The legacy months passed, but the impact of that night in Greene County echoed louder. A federal task force dismantled corrupt practices within small departments across the country. Greene County itself elected a new sheriff, one who promised transparency and accountability, and who invited Monique to speak at the inauguration. When she stood before that crowd, she didn't deliver a fiery speech. Instead, she told a simple truth. Dignity is not a privilege. Justice is not optional. And silence, in the face of corruption, is complicity. The crowd erupted, not in chaos, but in hopeful applause. Epilogue. Years later, school children in Greene County would study the night the FBI stormed their sheriff's station. They'd learn about a veteran who refused to bow, a rookie who chose truth over silence, and a community that finally found its voice. And somewhere in a quiet home, Monique Harris would sit by her window, sipping tea, watching the sunset. Not broken, not bitter, simply steadfast. Her battle was never about vengeance. It was about ensuring that the next black woman, the next veteran, the next innocent person would never face the humiliation she endured. She had carried herself with the dignity of a soldier and the courage of a truth-teller. And because of that, justice had not only been served, it had echoed across a nation.